This happened a few years ago. My aunt and uncle own a restaurant. One Saturday, they were moving from their old location to the new one. My aunt, uncle, future husband, boyfriend at the time, cousin, and about 10 other people, mostly employees, were helping with the move since there was a bunch of large equipment. We were all at the old restaurant packing things, tying them down when we ran out of ratchet straps. I offered to drive to my parents' house, about a 30 minutes drive, to get more straps from my dad. Because everyone else was busy, I went alone. On the way back, I got a call from my aunt saying that they were all going to take a load to the new location and to meet them there. Since I didn't know how to get to the new place, I pulled over in a park to put in the address. From the road, you aren't able to see the parking lot at all because of the trees. The only odd thing that I didn't notice at the time was on this sunny weekend day, there were no other cars in the parking lot. I pulled into a parking spot and immediately grabbed my phone to put in the address. For whatever reason, I didn't put it in park like I normally do, which unlocks the doors. Less than a minute after I looked down, I heard and felt a huge hit to the car. I remember looking at him for so long I thought it was odd how I couldn't see the color of his eyes because of how big his pupils were. It's important to note that I was in a small SUV, and he had to bend over to look in the window. A second later, he was pulling the door handle so hard I thought it was going to come off. I was also confused why the door wasn't unlocked, like it normally would be when I'm in a parking spot. He got visibly upset that the door wasn't opening, so he started banging the side of his fist against the window, swinging his whole arm over and over. Getting progressively more pissed, he moved to the door handle of the back seat. And at this point, I was so scared of him getting in the car, I grabbed and unsheathed the camping knife I had in my door. When I looked back at him, he stopped attacking the car, saw the knife, and smiled. I think it was right then I realized that he didn't want money. He didn't want to rape me. He wanted to kill me. I knew that if he got in the car, it was going to be over for me, even with the knife. He was way bigger than me, and hitting the car so hard I was amazed that the windows held. I guess I got comfortable with him not being able to get the doors open, but after bashing the back window a few more times, the car rocking back and forth every time he moved to the trunk, the panic got worse because I knew the doors weren't opening for some reason, but maybe the trunk would. Since it was an SUV, if he got in the trunk, he could just climb over the back seats and get to me. He hit against the back window with both of his balled-up fists and was yelling something I couldn't understand. Right then, I realized that I could slam it in reverse. I dropped the knife in my lap, hit my gear shift into R, grabbed the wheel, and put my foot down. I still have no idea if I hit him or if he jumped out of the way. I didn't look back. I put it in drive and peeled out of the parking lot. It was my first time ever ignoring a stop sign. I still have no idea why I didn't put it in park. It was a regular Tuesday night. My parents were away and I had the house to myself. I was chilling on the couch, binge-watching a series, when I noticed something odd outside my living room window. The street was dimly lit, but I could make out a figure lurking near my neighbor's house. At first, I thought it might be one of their friends or a family member, someone they were expecting. But the longer I watched, the more uneasy I became. This person was just standing there, staring at their front door. It gave me the creeps, but being the rational person I am, I dismissed it as my imagination running wild. As the night progressed, I got up to grab a snack from the kitchen. That's when I heard a creak, a subtle noise that sent a chill down my spine. I froze. The front door was slightly ajar. Panic set in, and I immediately regretted not double-checking if I'd locked it. I hesitated, debating whether to investigate or call the police. But curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I tiptoed toward the door. It swung open with a soft groan, revealing an eerily quiet house. I heard a noise upstairs like footsteps. My heart pounded as I realized someone was inside my home. Fear gripped me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I retreated to a closet, my breath caught in my throat, praying they wouldn't find me. From my hiding spot, I could hear the intruder moving through the rooms, searching for something. The tension was unbearable. I clutched my phone, ready to call for help, when I heard a noise from downstairs. It was a door slamming shut. I strained to listen, and my blood ran cold as I heard the unmistakable sound of a scream echoing through the night. My mind raced, and I realized the intruder hadn't found me, but had moved on to my neighbor's house. Guilt and relief washed over me in equal measure. I couldn't believe the horrifying turn of events. I stayed hidden until I was sure it was safe, and then, with shaky hands, I called the police. When they arrived, I explained what had happened. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks when they went next door. My neighbor, a kind elderly couple, had been brutally attacked. The scene was something out of a nightmare. It wasn't a random break-in. The intruder had specifically targeted them. The investigation unfolded, and the police caught the perpetrator. Turns out he had a twisted motive and had mistaken my house for theirs. It's a chilling realization that I narrowly escaped a fate that befell my neighbors. The guilt still lingers, wondering if there was anything I could have done differently. The randomness of it all, the fact that a simple twist of fate saved my life that night, is a haunting thought. It's a reminder that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places, and sometimes survival is just a matter of luck. So there you have it, the night I narrowly avoided a killer but couldn't prevent the tragedy that unfolded next door. Life can be stranger and scarier than any horror movie. Stay safe, everyone. The coffee shop was like my safe haven, a comfy place tucked between tall office buildings and the busy city life. It was where I went to relax after a tough day at work, getting away from all the noise of tasks and duties. I really enjoyed being by myself, savoring the peaceful times with a hot cup of coffee and a great book. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the deserted streets, I returned home after a particularly taxing day at the office. The air was crisp, and a sense of tranquility hung in the atmosphere. Unlocking the door to my apartment, I noticed an unfamiliar chill. It felt colder than usual. I lived alone, no roommates and no family to interrupt my peaceful routine. As I made my way through the rooms, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The silence was oppressive, echoing in the empty space like a haunting melody. I instinctively reached for the thermostat, but it was set to a reasonable temperature. Puzzled, I decided to shake off the unease and retire to my room. As I settled into the routine of changing into comfortable clothes, I noticed my normally lively cat, Whiskers, was nowhere to be found. Concern etched my face as I searched every nook and cranny. After a brief but tense search, I discovered him cowering behind the living room couch. His eyes were wide with fear, and he hissed at my approach, a behavior entirely foreign to our 3 years of companionship. Trying not to let the unease settle in, I left him to his refuge, assuming he'd come around once whatever had spooked him had dissipated. Little did I know, it was just the beginning of a bizarre night. As I prepared for bed, the serenity of the night shattered when a muffled voice outside my window broke through the silence. It was a man, repeatedly calling out a polite but eerie, "Good night." Fear gripped me as I peered through the curtains, only to see the dim outline of a tall figure dressed in a dark suit. His unsettlingly long smile and unnaturally white teeth were visible even in the dim light. The man seemed fixated on me, waving with disproportionately large hands, his words repeating in a monotonous loop. Questions raced through my mind. Who was he, and why was he lurking outside my window in the dead of night? Panic set in as I fumbled to dial 911, but just as quickly as it began, the unsettling goodnight ceased. A sudden, thunderous noise filled the air, the sound of someone racing up the stairs. My heart pounded as I heard my cat growling and hissing in terror. The night descended into a nightmare as bone-chilling sounds filled the air. The man's distorted voice whispered through the door, sending shivers down my spine. I pleaded for an explanation, but his response was a hauntingly casual, "Good night." The banging on the door intensified, and I retreated to the window, paralyzed by fear. Eventually, the disturbance subsided, leaving me curled up by the window until the first rays of morning light. Trembling, I cautiously opened the door to find Whiskers, unharmed and waiting for me. Relief washed over me as I held him close, grateful that the nightmare had ended. To this day, the events of that night remain a chilling memory, a surreal encounter that defied explanation. It's a story I've kept to myself, afraid that sharing it would lead to skepticism or judgment. Yet, the echoes of that bizarre night linger, a reminder that even in the most ordinary moments, the line between reality and the inexplicable can blur in unsettling ways.